Straight ahead on Law and Crime Daily, Scott Peterson awaits a decision on the future of his case while he seeks a new trial over alleged juror misconduct, 20 years after the death of his wife Lacey and their unborn son Connor. Plus, jurors hear from defendant Paul Flores in police interviews from 26 years ago in the 1996 disappearance case of Kristen Smart. And body cam footage shows the moments police take a suspect into custody as Mohammed Syed faces charges in connection to several murders in a Muslim community in New Mexico. But first, the stabbing death of Christian Obumseli. We hear from his family's former attorney as OnlyFans model Courtney Clenney is charged with his murder. Law and Crime, everybody, to Law and Crime Daily. I am your host, Imran Ansari. We got the opportunity to sit down with the former attorney for the family of a man stabbed to death in April. This comes as his girlfriend, OnlyFans model and social media influencer Courtney Clenney, is awaiting extradition to Florida after being arrested in connection with his death. Clenny, who goes by Courtney Taylor for her more than 2 million followers on social media, was arrested in Hawaii on Wednesday, 4 months after the murder in their Miami apartment. She is charged with second-degree murder in the stabbing death of Christian Obumseli. Clenny's attorney insists the social media influencer stabbed him in self-defense after he grabbed her by the throat. The couple reportedly had a history of domestic violence events, even some including the cops being called to their residence, though friends of the couple have given conflicting reports on which one of them was abusive. Video surfaced of one altercation between Clenny and Obumseli in an elevator where Clenny is seen hitting her boyfriend. Prosecutors say Clenny had previous bouts of aggression when the couple lived in Austin, Texas, and after they moved to Florida. Court documents reveal interviews with neighbors in Miami who complained about the couple arguing into the night. On the night, an eviction notice was sought. Obumseli's family has pushed for Clenny's arrest since the April stabbing. They continue to demand answers. Civil rights attorney Lee Merritt tells us he believes the charges are justified in this case.
It seems more accurate now that, she was going after him. She was looking to hurt him, and she was able to do that on this day with a deadly weapon. I think she was appropriately charged with second-degree murder. A Black man can be the victim of a white woman. We rarely see that, and I think that's the reason we saw this 4-month gap before an arrest was made. But I think the state prosecutor's going out of her way to say, this is not about race or bias or even poor police initial investigation, but this is about domestic violence, and we have to call it what it is in every case. Hats off to the family of Christian Obumseli, who continued to fight. The Nigerian community said that Christians should be treated like any other victim and that a thorough investigation should take place. And so they ran an independent investigation. A 3 to 4 month period before formal charges move forward is quite normal. What we normally see, though, is an initial arrest, which never took place here. And so now to see Ms. Clenny in cuffs, in custody in East Hawaii is a major development.
Okay, joining me today are law and crime legal analyst Julie Rendelman and forensic death investigator Joseph Scott Morgan. Julie, I'm going to start with you. At first, Clenny was brought in to give a statement but then released because police believed it was self-defense. Could that hurt the prosecution's case once it goes to trial?
It could. If you're the defense attorney, what are you going to say? You're going to cross-examine each of the potential detectives and police officers to establish that they believed her at the time, so much so that they let her go and kept her out for 4 months. And they're also going to push the narrative, whether true or not, that it was only a political reason that the prosecutor eventually arrested her, that it was the family that was pushing to get her arrested of the victim. And that's something, look, the jury will decide whether that matters to them, but that's something they may consider.
Joseph Scott Morgan, I'm going to ask you the next question. We don't know how many times Obumseli was stabbed, but there are reports it was in his shoulder through an artery near his heart. What would the specifics of that mean for a self-defense argument?
I think that's going to be hard to prove. Initially, she had stated that she threw the knife at him, and I got to tell you, this is not a thrown knife event. The chief medical examiner stated that it was a 6-inch blade that passed through his chest 3 inches and clipped what's referred to as the subclavian artery or the subclavicular artery, which is just a fancy way of saying beneath the collarbone. And this is significant because this artery, if you're in distress and they roll you into the emergency room, they go directly in to that artery to put an IV in because it's the quickest way to get drugs into your body. He would not have had a chance, even if he had had a team of cardiothoracic surgeons standing by. She clipped this vessel and he began to bleed out. And most importantly, the ME is saying this is a downward path. That means that she took the knife and drove it down like this into his chest. This is not straight on or anything like that. I think that this is going to, second degree fits this, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah, we're going to be watching this case as it unfolds in court. And also in celebrity news, the investigation into the fatal shooting of cinematographer Helena Hutchins on the set of Alec Baldwin's movies Rust inches towards an end, as the FBI finalizes its forensic analysis of the incident. Investigators say they are still waiting to obtain Baldwin's phone records, now nearly 9 months since the deadly shooting. It happened in May while the actor was using a prop gun during a rehearsal on the film set near Santa Fe. The gun Baldwin was holding had a live ammunition round inside, which went off, killing Hutchins and injuring film director Joel Souza. Since the shooting, New Mexico's Occupational Health and Safety Bureau, or OSHA, fined the production company behind the film over firearm safety violations. Hutchins' family also sued Baldwin and the movie's producers, but no one has been criminally charged over the incident yet. Investigators now must comb through a recent report from the New Mexico Office of Medical Investigator. Once that's done and Baldwin's phone records are received, the case will be sent to the district attorney's office to determine if any charges will be filed and against who. And Russia confirms for the first time that they are in negotiation talks with the U.S. officials over the possible prisoner exchange of WNBA player Brittany Griner. Griner was arrested in February after Moscow airport officials discovered she was carrying 2 vape cartridges containing cannabis oil, which is illegal in Russia. Griner asked the court for leniency and pleaded guilty to the charges, but she was ultimately sentenced to more than 9 years in prison last week on charges of drug possession and drug smuggling. Last month, the Biden administration made a proposal to Russia to facilitate Griner's return and former U.S. Marine Paul Whelan, who has been held since 2018 on espionage charges, which he has repeatedly denied. The possible trade could include Russian arms trafficker Viktor Bout, who is currently serving a 25-year prison sentence in the United States. And still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, veteran investigators describe a police interview with defendant Paul Flores in the 1996 disappearance case of Kristen Smart. But first, a convicted wife killer seeks a new Welcome back. The state rests its case shortly after jurors hear from the victim's son in the resentencing case of Jason Wheeler, a man once again facing a possible death sentence in the 2005 shooting death of a Florida deputy. Wheeler was convicted in 2006 of several charges, including first-degree murder. A year after he shot and killed Wayne Kester in an apparent ambush, Deputy Kester responded to a neighborhood call after a domestic violence complaint from Wheeler's then-girlfriend. When deputies arrived, they were ambushed. Kester was shot in the head at close range. 2 other deputies were also shot. After a massive manhunt, Wheeler was involved in a second shootout with law enforcement in which he was paralyzed. He was ultimately sentenced to death, but that sentence was overturned when Florida ruled a death penalty recommendation must be unanimous. Those close to the victim were given an opportunity to speak as part of the resentencing trial. Kester's son gave an emotional statement Friday afternoon.
February 9, 2005, my life changed forever. Not a day goes by that I don't think about him. And if I'm doing right, or if he would even be proud of the man I've become. But I'll never know. He will never be at my wedding, or see me with my first child. I'll never get to see him play with my grandchildren, or have him sit and drink a beer with me and just talk about life. And I joined the Army. And I took that path so that he would hopefully be proud of me. And I hope he is proud of me. And I love him and miss him.
And convicted killer Scott Peterson now awaits a decision from a judge whether or not he will be granted a new trial in the 2002 slayings of his wife Lacey and their unborn son. Peterson appeared in a California court for one final hearing as his attorneys argue for a new trial over alleged juror misconduct. His attorneys claim juror Rochelle Nice, who was nicknamed Strawberry Shortcake because of her red hair, lied on her juror questionnaire about being a victim of domestic violence and said she hadn't been part of a lawsuit. Nice testified during a hearing earlier this year that she didn't lie because she didn't consider herself a victim and didn't consider the restraining order granted to her a lawsuit. At the end of court Thursday, the judge told attorneys they have until September 16th to submit memorandums if they have any questions. After that, she will have 90 days to come back with a decision. This was the first time since 2003 that cameras have been allowed in court for the Peterson case. Now, Joseph, this crime happened 20 years ago. Could there be any new forensic evidence that the prosecution could present if Peterson is given a new trial?
That's going to be heavily dependent upon how they the authorities preserved that evidence that they came up with all the way back then. Remember, this evidence goes into an evidence locker and it sits there. And if we're thinking about things like DNA and that sort of thing, it has a tendency to degrade over a period of time if it's not kept perfectly. And so that could be a problem. I can't imagine, though, that there would be other items that have not already been examined that would bring anything else new to light in Scott Peterson's case.
Yeah, and Julie, if there is a new trial, you think they're going to allow cameras inside that courtroom? And will there be the same media frenzy surrounding this trial as we saw when the murder first happened in that first trial?
So that would be a big if. And so my guess is that they won't. I mean, like I do, Imran, in New York, they don't allow it. And I'd be surprised that they allowed, again, they've allowed little bits of the hearings to be broadcast. I'm not so sure that'll change. In terms of the media, I don't see it being the same as it was all those years ago, but then again, I could be wrong.
Yeah, and we have 90 days till that court's decision. We're going to be keeping tabs on what happens in that case. And coming up here on Law and Crime Daily, jurors are shown interview footage with the defendant from 26 years ago in the case of Paul and Ruben Flores as they face charges for the disappearance of Kristen Smart. Plus, police body cam footage shows officers taking a quadruple murder suspect into custody. Welcome back. In California, testimony in the trial of father and son Paul and Ruben Flores over the disappearance of Kristen Smart continued, despite 3 participants in the trial testing positive for COVID-19. The father and son are being tried in the 1996 disappearance of Smart, who went missing after a party around Memorial Day. Paul was reportedly the last person seen with the Cal Poly student. Prosecutors allege he sexually assaulted Smart before killing her, and that his father buried her body in his backyard before moving her elsewhere. No body or remains have ever been found. Paul is charged with murder, while Ruben is charged with accessory after the fact. This week, jurors were shown a police interview with Paul. The former investigator who testified described Paul's answers to questionings that he said the last time he saw Smart, she was walking towards her dorm. A second deputy testified Thursday and into Friday. Paul's defense attorney on cross-examination questioned him about the search on Paul's dorm room. All right, let's break this down. Julie, prosecutors have had 26 years to pile up evidence against a suspect, which eventually pointed to Paul more than it did right after her disappearance. What are the obstacles they are facing other than time to convict Paul?
One of the big obstacles is obviously that we don't have a body, so we don't have a way of proving exactly what caused her death. We don't have DNA. We have very, very limited forensic evidence, and we have no actual eyewitnesses to her death. So 26 years plus these things makes it very difficult for the prosecutor to move forward with this case. Thankfully, they have statements that appear to be inconsistent, and that does take them a step forward along with those cadaver dogs to see what they have.
Joseph Scott Morgan, I want to get your forensic sort of intake on this. We haven't heard the defense case yet. What should they focus on, or who could they point the finger to as an alternative suspect?
Well, I think that they've got an entire student body that they could at least, point the finger at. I'd like to point the finger at the authorities from Jump Street on this case because it was a train wreck. Their response to her disappearance initially, being able to get locations locked down, and then finally, when you collect evidence out of these rooms, I go back to what we had talked about earlier. How's that evidence been maintained over this period of time? And so, I think that there are more questions than there are answers. It's a shame that we haven't found or they haven't found her remains yet. So hard to say, but I think that cadaver dogs play a big role in this.
Yeah, a lot of time has passed. Hopefully there will be some closure for the Smart family. And also in California, after a late start Friday morning, testimony continued into its fourth day in the Kobe Bryant civil lawsuit brought against Los Angeles County by his wife, Vanessa. The lawsuit was filed following law enforcement officers sharing photos of the crash, which killed Kobe, his daughter Gianna, and 7 others after their helicopter plunged into the side of a hill in January of 2020. Vanessa and another family is suing the county after first responders took graphic photos at the crash site and allegedly shared them with others outside the police and fire departments. Testimony so far has brought Vanessa to tears several times. On Thursday, she walked out of court while a bartender was on the stand describing images he was shown by an officer at the bar where he works. Vanessa asked the judge to leave after he was asked if he had seen the body of her daughter. On Friday, questioning focused on the Golden Mike Awards Gala, where county officials allegedly passed around crash site photos. When we come back, police released body cam video in the arrest of Mohammed Saeed, a man charged in connection to the murders of several Muslim men in New Mexico. Welcome back. The 2 remaining officers awaiting trial on state charges in the death of George Floyd are scheduled to face a judge on Monday. Tu Tao and J. Alexander King still face a state trial on charges of aiding and abetting both second-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter in the May 2020 killing of George Floyd, when then Officer Derek Chauvin kneeled on his neck for more than 9 minutes, killing him. He was found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to more than 22 years in prison. Another former officer, Thomas Lane, previously pleaded guilty to aiding and abetting second-degree manslaughter as part of a plea deal. Details of the hearing haven't been released, but what we do know, it's centered around the status of King and Tao's plea negotiations. The 4 have already been sentenced on federal civil rights charges. King and Tao's trial is scheduled for October. The hearing Monday is set to begin at 9 a.m. Albuquerque police released body cam video of the arrest of a man in connection to the killings of 4 Muslim men. This is Mohammed Saeed makes his first appearance in court. Thanks to tips from the community, investigators were able to track down the Volkswagen sedan allegedly driven by the suspect in the most recent killing and in turn arrested Saeed. Officials say they have charged him in 2 of the deaths. Mohammed Afzal Hussein, who was found fatally shot on August 1st, and Aftab Hussein, who was killed days earlier on July 26th. Authorities are working to connect the defendant to 2 other murders, 25-year-old Naeem Hussein, who was killed last Friday, and the first murder of Mohammed Ahmadi last November. Saeed appeared in court this week over video with an interpreter. His attorney advised him remaining silent would be in his best interest. Authorities have not yet determined a motive behind the killings. On Thursday, police released the body cam footage of his arrest, more than 100 miles away from Albuquerque in Santa Rosa. Saeed is being held without bond. Okay, let's break this down. Joseph, I want to start with you. Investigators say they found matching rounds in Saeed's car, which matched up with 2 of the victims' murders. What other evidence will they need, Joseph, in order to connect him with the other killings?
Well, first, I think that the ballistic evidence is going to be key here. They did, according to what I've read, find 1 weapon with him. There may be another one at his home where he was currently domiciled. And so the ballistic evidence is going to be significant. Those rounds that are recovered from the bodies of the victims, if they can be ballistically matched up, as well as the spent cartridges that were left behind. Now, I think another big point to this, we're all married to cell phones, right? And how big is that? His movements have been tracked. Remember, these are different areas. This didn't all occur in one location. I think electronic evidence is going to play a huge role in it.
Right, and this is going to be a case that we are going to be tracking here at Law and Crime. I want to thank you for joining us here in the Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.